Rebecca with us, and she's from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And she's going to talk about community mapping for risk identification and communication. Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Hi. So thanks very much for the introduction. I'm Rebecca, and I work with Humanitarian OpenStreetMap. We are a global NGO and community of 170,000 volunteers who create open source maps in OpenStreetMap to support any development or humanitarian project. So just in a nutshell, these are the three key parts of our vision. We want to see a world where everyone is counted. We can see everyone and every community on the map. Where data is accessible and used, so where we have open data, anyone can use it. People are enabled to actually do all the great stuff that you can do with data, and enable anyone anywhere to actually contribute to the map. So our approach is that we engage community members to create maps of their own livelihoods. And that really kind of obviously flips the traditional model where you might have, say, a mapper would normally be an expat who has quite a lot of experience, who's using really expensive, complicated tools. We kind of have tried to change that to include sort of lots of very simple to use online and app-based tools that work offline. To make sure that anyone anywhere can actually represent themselves and their community on the map. So just a very brief overview so far. So we've had 170,000 volunteers so far. So hopefully that means the tools have achieved the goal of being pretty simple to use. We've put an area home to 80 million people on the map. And our target is 1 billion by 2021. And we have all the data kind of available and open for anyone to use. So far, we've had 12,000 downloads in HDX, but that's something that we really, really want to increase because obviously data creation is one part of this and data use is a whole other story. And what I'm going to do is just share three quick examples of how we do this data collection and kind of visualization from three different contexts. But first, just to kind of mention that all the photos included in this, these are the people who are the mappers. So I think it's kind of important to get that across, that we're really trying to get a kind of untraditional kind of person into that role based on what you'd usually have. The first example I'm going to share is from Tanzania. So anyone who's worked in Tanzania knows that Dar es Salaam has a really, really high amount of localized flooding, flash flooding, and that causes just a huge amount of disturbance, economic unrest, puts people in very precarious situations. And it's also one of the places in the world where, you know, the most surveys ever have been done. It's like kind of time and time again, people answer really basic surveys, questions. They don't really see that much benefit to themselves. And, you know, why are we continually surveying in Tanzania? Like one of the reasons is that the data isn't open, so you can't just use someone else's survey that they did 2 weeks before. So we're really passionate about making this kind of something that anyone can use and add to, rather than having to kind of redo it themselves. Like, how can we all build on this same database? And we're really focused in this area around three things, which is understanding historical flooding. Flash flood databases are kind of one of the worst databases in the world, especially in less developed locations. So how can we use people's kind of living memory to identify those? And how can we make it really, really simple? So don't ask people, how high was the flood in centimeters? Ask them, was it to your ankle, or was it to your knee, or was it to your waist? And with that sort of information, you can actually get generally pretty consistent responses, because you're not kind of asking people to use like a centimeters or something, which might not be that familiar to them. And then understanding the adaptive capacity and kind of advantages, things that the communities could actually sort of do themselves to increase their own resilience. And whilst kind of some of this happens through surveying, so training community members to survey other community members in the place that they live, also happens through community workshops, so group identification of risks, and also actually one really important part of this is what we call community sharebacks, which is taking the data and the maps back to the communities and saying, hey, this is what we created, this is what this means, this is who's using it, and this is how you can keep it up to date. That's really important for us to kind of encourage more sustainability in the data. It's not a one-time thing. So that's Tanzania. This second example is from a partner of ours through a project called the Missing Maps 510 and the Netherlands Red Cross. And it's a very recent example from Mozambique, where they had sort of various early information coming through about likely flooding, but not much of a kind of initial idea of, okay, right, what are we going to do early action and respond to that? So using just a really simple combination of base maps that were already available, topography data and the forecast, they're able to make this really detailed map here that tells them exactly who's at risk, how at risk they are, what's at stake. And the real kind of way I think that we take this to the next level is to integrate it much more broadly in forecast-based financing and other sort of Red Cross initiatives, adding in really, really hyper-local information like building materials, kind of quality of roofs, adding in estimations around livelihoods. If people have farms, how much livestock is there, how many crops are there, how can we actually estimate really what this means to them. Historical flood impact and adaptive capacity as well, to make this kind of something that could really give you all the tools you would need to do something like FBF. This is just a little visual of that there. And then the final example that I wanted to share is Peta Bencana, which is a program from Indonesia. We've been mapping Indonesia in quite some detail for many years, working with the Disaster Risk Management Agency, which is a really nice example of one of the kind of first adopters, really, of this crowdsourced citizen-generated data for formal government use. And on this platform, essentially, individuals send in reports via social media of flooding in their local area. And those are then tagged onto a map, which tells you information about sort of how high they are, actual kind of proof that they happened, photos, etc., which kind of creates this database of this very localized and kind of quick information that you need sort of very quickly, you need it cheaply, you need it right now. And it's a really nice way to be able to actually get that information into the hands of people who can actually do something with it. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's a really nice example of what we're really trying to do, which is look at, say, what official data processes, official like DRM services actually need in terms of data. What are the gaps in that, and how can crowdsourced information help to fill those gaps? So it's by no means a kind of replacement of a service or a process that exists. It's just trying to say, okay, how can we get this information to be available, for the people that need it? How can we help to plug that gap? And this is a really great example, along with the Indonesian Disaster Management Agency, who've been kind of great early adopters of that. And then, just to close out, I wanted to kind of reiterate that point I said at the beginning, that anyone, anywhere can be a mapper. That really is our goal. I live in Peru. These are a few kids from a high school locally in an area that experiences constant landslides. And using really simple Android devices, they can just press go on their phone, walk along a road, press stop, maybe add some information like, was this road paved or how wide was it? But in something as simple as walking around their own neighborhoods, they can create a platform and a map that can actually be used to, say, identify risks that are affecting them, actually respond to those risks, and do all these kind of brilliant things. This is a particular project of them looking at kind of archaeological sites through Google Cardboards near where they live. Um, and then finally, just to talk about missing maps for a second, we have a booth just there. So if you want to talk to anyone in more detail, Missing Maps is this big collaborative project where we're trying to share all of this information. So you can use the existing maps, you can request us to make new maps, you can join the partnership and learn to kind of, embed this stuff more concretely in your organization. So far we have 18 members, and several of them are also here at this conference and kind of talking to new prospective kind of joiners. So if you're interested in creating this kind of data in your projects, then please let us know. So I'll close there and happy to take any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.